Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we ended up going through intel missions, and I think this time we'll do some more intel. We haven't done these in a while, they're starting to fill up my inventory. Sitting on 50, I know I got more in storage. Actually, I don't. I still have 50, so that doesn't really change the situation here. So get more XP, gotta keep leveling, and we'll just go through 2 of these. Maybe we'll get a boss mission for a seasonal thing. If not, probably next time. Okay, we can do that. So, do you guys remember Sha Leaden? He was the head of PlayStation before... What's the current guy? Jim Ryan? And whoever takes his place now. But he was the head guy back, like, PlayStation 4. He ended up moving on to, I think, NetEase? I can't remember exactly who hired him on, but he's wherever at this point. But there was talk with him after the Insomniac hack and leak, and what he said I think is very true. In the coming year, he said, we will hear a lot more about game budgets. Which I think is a very, very fitting thing, given we're seeing these games just rise in cost. Spider-Man 1 cost $100 million, Spider-Man 2 cost $300. Those kind of costs and the needed sales to break even, they definitely stand as something where once your average consumer starts to become aware of that, it's one of those things where people are kind of going, hey, so what's up with all this? And I think it's very, very reasonable to ask the question. Because it is a very strange phenomenon, like I said before. But I saw an article actually talking about what he had said, and not exactly refuting what he said, but just kind of trying to discuss it a bit. And one of the points that was made, I thought was really interesting. The article had said, the cost of making the game isn't surprising when you have about 500 staff and your median salary is $120,000 American. I sat there and I was like, $120,000? Really? Now I understand, when it comes to game design, there are technical roles. Programmers they're in demand. You want people who can do a good job. You have your security people, you have your art people. Because AI hasn't replaced everybody just yet. Even though, actually we'll talk about that afterwards, stuff with Square Enix, but it got me thinking, because I was like, man, median of $120,000, you know part of that has to do with cost of living. Because I had family who lived in, like, San Francisco, I think, in the 90s. And he had to live, it was an uncle, he had to live with like 6 dudes to pay rent. I have a friend of mine who I play D&D with, who is over in Oakland. He lives with like 6 or 8 people. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, what? You can't tell me that this is the best option to be like, yeah, so we're just going to pay out the nose for our staff, inflating our costs, just to make sure they can live in, like, San Diego. Have you looked at a house in San Diego? They suck. I've seen places that are single story, 1 bedroom or maybe 2 bedroom, 1.5 bath, if that. Tiny houses, realistically, that are like $1 million. So I sat down and I got into my researching mode, and I'm like, how much is the cost of living? So I sat down and I was like, okay, what is the median price on a house in San Diego? Take a guess. $1 million. I said, okay, what's the next big gaming place? Like, where are all the studios? Seattle. What's the median cost for a house in Seattle? Like $950,000. I said, okay, let's pick somewhere else. And I want you to guess this. It makes sense, but it's funny to me. What is the median cost of a house in Fargo, North Dakota? Keep in mind, Fargo's a big city in North Dakota. When you hear of, like, big cities in North Dakota, you got Fargo, you got Minot, and you got Grand Forks. Minot because it's got the military base, Grand Forks because it's Grand Forks, it's really all they got. And Fargo because it's literally across the border from Moorhead. So people refer to it as like Fargo Moorhead. It is more or less one city split in half. The median cost of a house in Fargo is like I actually have it written down. $375,000. Now tell me, why the hell don't they set up shop in Fargo? You can't tell me people, like, admittedly, I will say this. Living in Fargo is a personal choice. If you don't like the cold, if you don't like snow, you don't live there. If you're, pun slightly intended, cool with it, it's not bad. I don't have a problem with Fargo or Grand Forks, Duluth, anywhere like that. Granted, I love the cold. I love snow. So that doesn't bother me. Now, some people, they're not big on it. But I also think you can pay people a lot cheaper and most likely get the same quality. And even if the quality's a little lower, if you got even close to the same amount of sales, you would be turning profits. I think a big problem is these studios are paying too much because they're just locked in these places. I get when, like, Blizzard can't move. Yeah, they got a big old campus. There's no way you are picking up and moving the entire Blizzard campus elsewhere. You are insane. The cost of those buildings alone, and who would fill them? So I get that. There are situations where it's not feasible. They're untenable and you can't deal with that. But smaller studios like Amazon Game Studios, where I've seen their facility, I've seen interviews, I've heard people talk about it, and it's more or less, yeah, the place is more or less a warehouse converted with, like, cubicles. And I'm like, yeah, I can find a warehouse. Hell, I wouldn't set up shop in Minneapolis, you can't make me. But you could go to Minneapolis and there's literally like a warehouse district. Just make sure you have good locks. And a gate. and maybe a couple armed guards, and you're fine. Yeah, skill point. What do I even want? Single DPS? Oh yeah, because this is single target damage, yep. I hit the wrong button. Yeah, sweet, I actually got it to count. Because after that I'm not really sure where I'm going. I was supposed to continue on with critical hits, because I need to get No Remorse and Berserker Rage. Oh well. I don't really care. I might actually get Red Thirst just because it's free damage. Granted, it's when a critical hit kills, and that's very specific. So I might not, it's kind of a waste. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know what I'm really gonna grab. Stuff like support is okay, but I'm not really sold on any aspect of it. Like, admittedly, inoculator augmentation, that's pretty solid. HP regen when your inoculator is on cooldown. That's pretty cool. But it also comes at the cost of like, hey, you get more healing, except your cooldown just took a 40% hit to get here. So you're not getting that much healing. Womp womp. More memes and intel. Okay, little rough. We can work with it. Warp resist, we can work with it. Oh, we are absolutely working with it. I just realized this is against Alpha Legion. Please pray for me. Quit shooting me, you damn hooligan. Hate those guys so much. But the other thing I was going to mention that I stopped myself because it was kind of a side tangent regarding Square Enix. They've talked about really ramping up their use of AI, which, if you've followed me for a bit, you kind of know my stance on AI. If you haven't, here's a lightning round. I'm kind of in the camp of let's go unregulated AI use kind of system. Mostly because if any government outlaws it, all they're going to do is research it in secret, and then if things go wrong, they're not going to tell anyone. So it's better to just be like, look, it's all out in the open. You know, we can then hold people and companies accountable if they do scummy stuff because it's just out there instead of them hiding it. But the stuff with Square Enix, it's interesting because they talk about how they're going to use AI more, but they did not specify in any means what they meant. And that's what I'm really interested in, because you have people who are instantly just losing their minds. Oh my god, they're going to do AI art, and they're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, look, AI can be used for more than just art. My question is, what are they planning? Because it could be using AI for some voice work, which I don't think AI voice work would be bad if it was something along the lines of saying, hey, what we're gonna do is it's not Square Enix related, but let's say let's use Fallout as the example. We're going to do the Radiant story system, but we're going to step up the complexity. Multi-stage missions, more actual dialogue. You might have to make actual charisma checks and stuff. You could use AI to tweak what someone says so that it sounds more organic. As we've seen with the, God, what was it? There was a Skyrim mod that used AI for a companion. And you could do that for, like, NPCs or random hirelings to talk to them. They could be like, oh yeah, I'm from here and did this, this, and this. And you could use AI to kind of create these more in-depth characters. Or it could just be, we're going to make some art and everybody's going to have 8 fingers per hand. I don't know. But as dumb as Square Enix has become as of late, I want to be optimistic and say they're going to try to do something competent. That said, they still have talked about NFTs, and I don't know what they're thinking at this point. I don't know anybody who still believes in NFTs at this current iteration. Unless someone in the Square Enix offices has some absolute just insane plan. Like Ocean's 11 style complexity that's like, we're gonna do these seemingly mundane and bizarre steps and it's gonna pan out and we're gonna hit it big. But I highly doubt that. Mostly because there's optimism and there's blind faith, and that kind of stuff leaps into blind faith. And I've racked my brain trying to come up with like actual solutions that would work with like NFTs. I have ideas, but they're still like, I look at them, I'm like, this still blows. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It still blows. Or it's convoluted systems that boil down to just like, yeah, Steam did it. Because that's really what the Steam marketplace is. Except it's, refined and not loaded with idiots trying to turn a JPEG of a monkey into millions of dollars. You really have to admit that whole trend of like Bored Apes was more or less economic, like, alchemy. Where idiots were turning lead into gold and then turning it back into lead. Now, I will say, do I wish I was one of those idiots who managed to turn a bunch of monkeys into money? Hell yeah. If I could have made money off it by using a program to just generate JPEGs and people would buy them, I would have done it. Would I do it to you guys? No. I'm not shilling that crap. But like I said before, a fool and his money are easily parted. And that whole subsection of people, a lot of fools. I did love the memes of people just screenshotting monkeys. That was pretty great. Or there was the guy who modded the memorial in Fallout New Vegas in Boulder, where you can like do whatever, take a picture of it or something, and the one guy will be like, "What the hell are you doing? My brother died there," and someone made it a Bored Ape, and then they just took the in-game camera and took a picture, and the guy's like, "What are you doing?" That was pretty creative. Nothing a good meme can't do to improve one's day. But yeah, the stuff with Square Enix, I'm interested, but I'm kind of cautious. Mostly because I don't know where they're gonna go. I know it won't have anything to do with Foam Stars, which I just remembered existed, or is coming out sometime. I want to know what they're going to do once Final Fantasy VII is finally done. Because the only thing I can see them doing is being like, okay, now that this nostalgia bait is done, we gotta move on to our next nostalgia bait. And what's the next one we got? Final Fantasy X. And as much as I love Final Fantasy X, I'm not buying a remake. Especially with the fact that Square Enix is like, oh yeah, we're gonna not just like remaster, we're gonna completely redo it and spend the next like 10 years to do it. Or they're gonna make it another game and be like, hey, we blended like Dirge Cerberus into it, and maybe we'll put Advent Children into it too, because yeah, it was a movie, but who cares? People are still willing to pay egregious amounts of money for a part of a game. And I will admit, I am not a Final Fantasy hater. I get tired of remakes and remasters. Kind of like Resident Evil. It's so boring. Like, everybody losing their mind over Resident Evil 4, when they didn't even completely remake parts of the game. Like, there was one of the, I think it was like the U3 or U2 boss, one of the big monsters. They just didn't do that boss fight. And the whole time I sit there going, why? You did all this other crap, but you couldn't just include all the base game content. And then you got people who are like, they can just skip Resident Evil 5. 5 sucked. 5 was okay. 5 was, I would say, acceptable. The most annoying part was everybody getting mad. That's like, oh my god, in Resident Evil 5 you can shoot and attack black people. I'm like, it's Africa. Where do you think they come from? I always thought of the joke from MASH, where they're talking about North Korea, I think it was. And it was, God, I can't remember, one of the guys, Burns, I think, he's like, something about North Korea, and Hawkeye goes, yeah, and you know what else North Korea is? The #1 exporter of North Koreans. And that always, I'm paraphrasing that joke, but it always stood out to me as something where, especially when it came to like Resident Evil 5, where it's like, yeah, black people are in Africa. Africa's the leading exporter of black people. It's kind of where they come from. It's like Asia is the leading exporter of Asians. That's a new trick. I remember that discourse. That was the dumbest discourse, too. Just people angry, and it's just like, no, once again, this is some, like, racism pareidolia. You are seeing things that don't exist. Like, if they wanted to, they could have really portrayed Africa poorly. It could have been, like, slums, child soldiers, everyone sounding like Ugandan Knuckles. But they didn't. And instead of being like, hey, thanks for not doing this terribly, games journalists, which of course that already sets the bar low, were losing their mind over the most innocuous things. And honestly, you could even do, like, child soldiers in a game and do it well. Like, a great example is Metal Gear Solid 5. MGS 5, I mean, you couldn't kill them, obviously, but, like, they didn't shy away from the fact that, like, yeah, there's child soldiers here. You're like, oh, that's unexpected. And of course, knowing, like, Raiden was a child soldier. But that's always kind of been part of the storyline, is, like, kind of wild stuff. Yeah, boss. I was hoping for a boss. That gives me an excuse for another mission to run, because I wanted to talk more about stuff. I love when the game gives me an excuse. I'd also love if the game gave me some loot that was worthwhile, but... you know, it happens. Okay, completely doable resistances. Can we get an extra champion? Yeah, okay, I'll accept that. But the other thing I want to talk about was just Metal Gear Solid. Like, I miss MGS games. Personally, I played 3, 4, 5, and Survive. I know a lot of people are like, oh, Survive was terrible. Shush. 5 was a good zombie game, bad Metal Gear. If you completely just ignored what little Metal Gear reference there was, it was a solid game. It was fun. Now, did it get weird when you could, like, call in Shagahad to do, like, donuts and shoot zombies? Yeah, it got weird. But the general idea was pretty cool. And I just miss Metal Gear games. I thought they were fun. I do wish 5 had gotten the ending Kojima had actually wanted to make, but somehow that man just went way over budget. And it sucks that the best we're getting is, like, MGS Delta, which is just Metal Gear Solid 3 Remaster. Personally, I don't want to play it. I played 3. I experienced it. I'm good. I want new experiences. Yeah, it's cool for people who never played the original. I think that's good. But I'm also just kind of like, could we get something new? I think they might be doing this to kind of test the waters and see if people want a new game. Because I think I remember Kojima saying, like, he didn't want the franchise to end with him. If my memory serves me, which, if it's correct, I prefer that. Like, if you really look at how he did things, he essentially just kind of ripped off, like, 24 and every spy movie for the past couple decades. So it's not like it was a font of creativity. I liked Rising Revengeance. I did play that one too. I just don't consider it like a mainline game. The one thing I never could get into was Metal Gear Online. But that's because I think Metal Gear's combat system kinda sucks. They're good stealth games, but like PvP is just pain and suffering. I would genuinely like a first-person shooter Metal Gear game, but make it from the perspective of Mercenaries, and have it all about the war economy, which was just a roundabout way of saying the military-industrial complex. Bring up stuff being like, yeah, even though the Patriots died, and it's an AI running it at this point, the system doesn't die. Because that's how it is. The military-industrial complex is so well entrenched that you can't really root it out. If tank manufacturers didn't keep making tanks, it doesn't just affect those factories and those workers, it affects the circuits and the rare earth processing places they use them, same as missiles and all this stuff. It's such a big knock-on effect that contributes so much to economies that we don't need conflict, but these industries need conflict to survive. And that'd be such an interesting thing to touch on, showing that it's still going. I would, even though any way of bringing back Big Boss or Snake would be really stupid, I'd be cool with it. Make him a clone. I don't care. I will take a clone of Snake and have him come back and kind of turn, like, your PMC company into Diamond Dogs 2 or Outer Heaven. I think it'd be cool. And kind of just a neat way of reviving everything, and it doesn't have to go as far as, like, Metal Gear Rising did. It was cool having, like, Metal Gear Ray come back, considering Ray in lore was made in, like, 2007. And then Desperado was like, hey, here's a drone version. But at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm like, when do you use that? I understand, like, a military company buying APCs or getting their hands on a tank. When do you need, like, a 15-story just death robot? I would rather them bring back, I think it was Pupa from Peace Walker. If you played it, it was the drone-looking thing with the railgun and the rocket pods and stuff. Giant one controlled by one of the pods. The control pod thing that was dangling off the front. Bring back that. That would make sense, especially with the advent and increase of drone warfare. Be like, yeah, this is kind of the new step of the war economy. Because cyborgs were cool, but my god, those are the most inconsistent, like, narrative piece I've ever seen. I understood when I was like, oh, Vamp has nanites. Okay, cool. Oh, Raiden was kind of a one-off cyborg soldier. Okay, but then they're like, oh, hey, so there's just cyborg soldiers. And I'm sitting here going, oh, okay. So why isn't everyone a cyborg soldier? If you're clearly more durable, can potentially move faster, you have essentially machine aiming, you can one-arm a Stinger launcher. Why isn't everyone a cyborg? Especially because then in the same game, later on they have Raiden fighting, like, some cops, and he can, like, hear their thoughts somehow. And the cops are cyborgs! I'm like, why are there cyborg cops? You're telling me a bunch of dudes who go to war, like, yeah, I'm totally cool getting shot at in my meat suit, but the dude who's pulling people over for traffic violations is like, yeah, make me the most fearsome, cybernetically enhanced warrior. I want to be RoboCop. And I just want to see some game use Walker Gears. I loved Walker Gears from 5. They were so cool. They were the perfect, like, strike vehicle. A little bit bigger than a person or two. Like, taller than a man standing. About, if you stood two guys, like, nuts to butts. Kinda that length. And it carried, like, a minigun. that is a fire support platform for individual squads, if I've ever seen one. And it works. Or the geckos. Those were cool. Or I think it's the Grad, which was a little weirder looking, but still cool vehicles. I want to see stuff like that in more combat scenarios in the Metal Gear universe. Yeah, part of the big draw was like, hey, look at these weirdos, like, oh god, the sorrow, the pain. Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank on the psychic guy, which is annoying because I know exactly who he is. Just, you look through the villains of the Metal Gear franchise and you see just the strangest people. And I get that's kind of the fun, but you could still have those. You can have some weirdo on a mission pop up and be like, haha, I'm the something, here's my super weird nanite power, ooh, I can emit a sonic sound that makes you hallucinate that there's multiple of me everywhere. That's fine, I don't care. I just also want to just wall up dudes in like normal combat situations. It'd be cool. And admittedly, I have a soft spot for any game that lets me be a mercenary. Okay, anything good? Too bad it's a sword. Bad. Bad. Berserk tokens, so it's unusable. Are you good? No. Okay, so that could have gone better, but it was a free mission, so that's fine by me. But that's where I'm going to call it for now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button, it helps out the channel a lot, and if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.